Alright, well, after that rather rousing game of Spaxus, we need to continue on with our adventure. Unfortunately, we seem to have been stripped of all of our gear, save for a white key and that handy pair of autocorrect skates. Now, even though these sewers are devoid of roaches, we cannot easily pick up that sigil over there, now that we lack the sword due to that path of boulders, so we'll have to come back later. Interestingly, the area is not just devoid of roaches, but the lions and gorillas that were here earlier as well. I wonder where they could have wandered off to. Ah, that explains matters, it's night. They must have gone home for the day after all, they only work 9 to 5. Well, let us do the same and make our way to our home as well. Although doing so may be difficult with this new enemy waiting for us. They flash red and blue and make a blaring noise. I'm not sure what they could be. Perhaps I misjudged them, perhaps they can be friendly. Let's talk with one. Oh, it's the coppers. And they must have enacted some sort of curfew at night, given how they rushed us immediately upon seeing us. So clearly we're going to have to avoid gaining their attention. Fortunately, getting caught by this one is actually somewhat beneficial, as it allows us to pick up this sigil that otherwise we would have had to have solved a puzzle in order to get to. But from this point on, we're going to want to avoid being seen by the police that are about, so we can make our way through. Now, you might think that we'll be able to deal with them with these grenades, but if you actually try and use one of these grenades, you'll realize that, oh, they're just pears. I guess our character must be poor of eyesight to confuse grenades with pears. We'll have to keep that in mind, that's probably an important detail to remember. Hint, it's actually not, I'm making bullshit up. So, yeah, as I mentioned before, this is basically a stealth segment. You need to stay around 5 tiles away from the police in order to avoid gaining their attention, and just make your way through as much as possible. Now ideally we'd be able to return to the starting screen to pick up all the items in storage, but unfortunately, as we'll find out if I can actually make it to that side of the screen, which is kind of dependent on where the police decide to move, that way is sealed off for us at the moment. So we'll just have to continue on and see where it takes us. Now this segment here is probably the most difficult part of the stealth section if you want to avoid getting caught by the police. There is a narrow corridor, and this policeman patrols it dutifully. There's very little room for error. In fact, there is so little room that there is in fact no room for error. It is impossible to avoid being caught, and in fact you have to be caught if you want to progress. But that takes us to the end of this hellish cop sequence, to yet another Mind Stone. Where could this possibly be taking us? It's taking us to Battle Chess. It's chess, but with a Final Fantasy ATB system, and some kick-ass music to go along with it. It follows the regular rules of chess, at least as far as I'm aware. I'll say something outright. I have never played chess in my life, and so I'm not at all familiar with the rules at all, aside from the fact that you don't want your king captured. So don't expect this to go too terribly smoothly, as I'm not all that familiar with how the various pieces move. Now the game is thankfully kind enough to actually show you where they can move when you click on them, but I'm not intimately aware of in which areas which pieces can move, so I'm not going to be able to use much in the way of strategy here. Basically, I'm going to end up playing more reactively, moving my pieces out of the enemy's eyesight when I see that's the case. Like this one's going to move over here, so I'm going to want to move the pawn out of the way, and then capturing pieces whenever the opportunity happens to be available to me. So the goal, much like actual chess, is to capture as many of the enemy's pieces as possible. Ideally, we'd be able to capture their king and end things swiftly, but they don't actually have a king on their side, so that's not actually an option. So for now, we'll just continue to capture as many of the white side's pieces as possible, and we'll see how things progress from there. That was not a good move, losing my queen just to capture a pawn. I warned you that there wouldn't be much strategy here. In fact, I may have screwed myself over. I have few enough pieces now that I'm not sure if I'll actually be able to progress far enough. But we'll see. Maybe I can manage to wring victory out of the jaws of defeat. There we go. That's another piece captured. And another one of mine lost. Damn. Oh, but there was our ultimate goal appearing on the same panel as that rook. I think that's what it is there. That is what we need to capture and what ultimately we want to collect. We only have a few pieces left, but all we need to do is capture that one piece and we've won. Just gotta keep the king safe in the meantime. The piece itself sadly does not want to seem to be captured. It keeps moving away, but hopefully it will move in a way that is opportune to us. I might want to actually try moving the king over to that piece over there. I might be better able to capture it than the one remaining. It's not a knight. Whatever kind of piece that is that I have left. Oh, there we go. Whew, that was close. So, now that we're free from FD's Mind Stone, we have what is easily the most useful item in the entire game, the bridge. I mentioned before that there was an item we would collect that is pretty clearly a direct reference to the old Atari game Adventure, and this is it right here. There was an item in that game that was a bridge that looked exactly like this, and it serves the same function there as it does here. It can be placed anywhere on the screen, collision be damned, and the center path becomes a pathway that you can traverse, allowing us to cross the water here, for example. Essentially what this does is it massively opens up the game world. At this point we have enough of an inventory that we can go pretty much anywhere in the game, and plenty of places that we're not supposed to get to. We can go outside of the bounds of the game if we place the bridge in just the right spot, although that's for the most part not all that useful. But yeah, this is where the game really opens up and becomes a lot more fun, because up till now it's been largely linear sequences of the text world, interspaced by these weird little mini-games. But now it becomes much more of an actual, like, open adventure, and has a lot more interesting, like, organic puzzles, trying to figure out how you can traverse through the world, and where all the items are, and how you can collect them. So immediately we're going to use that bridge to ascend this tree here, and with the aid of these centipedes guarding the walls of light, we're going to head into the key gen. So this is an interesting little room in that it allows you to collect keys while not doing the puzzles that would normally get you those keys in the first place. The purple and blue keys can be found elsewhere in the world, but with this we can bypass the puzzles that would normally be needed to get them, which is why it's the key gen. Additionally, there's also a purple key sigil.
All 4 members of Corn turned 35 in the early 2000s, and all 4 decided to run for president in the 2004 election cycle. They were disqualified when they guested together on the Rush Hour Brodeo and renounced their U.S. citizenship to declare fealty to New Metal Planet 1013 FM as a publicity stunt.
You know, it's weird how more people don't talk about the band Korn, considering just how many crazy shenanigans they seem to have gotten into in their heyday. Rather odd, that. So this is how you return to the regular game world as I just showed off, but now that I've done that, we're actually not going to continue adventuring from here because I do want to show off a little feature that I kind of mentioned a bit earlier than I meant to. I thought I had shown it off already, but then realized I didn't. So if you're not in one of the various minigame sequences or the scripted sequences, such as the snake mode or evading the cops, whenever you quit out of the game, you will actually lose all progress you've made and start back at the beginning. However, any items you've collected will be here in the storage for you to collect, allowing you to easily remake it back any progress that you've made. And I could have said that in a less awkward way, but oh well. So let's make sure to pick up everything again. including the handy dandy bridge. I'm immediately going to show off another interesting use of it, how it can be used creatively to get into places to bypass puzzles. So here, normally we would need to collect the cyan key in order to progress, but if we just place the bridge here, we can make our way past the door, making our way to this little clock over here which currently doesn't serve much of a use, as well as this warp gate. Sadly, that clever use of the bridge isn't ultimately that helpful, as it takes us to the other side of a shortcut we have yet to open, but that's just a good example of how the bridge can be used creatively to circumvent puzzles entirely, and that's why I like this section of the game as much as I do. So, for now, let's make a little bit of progress. Let's head back up to the Twisted Cistern. Now that we've collected the candle, we can pretty easily make our way through there. So let's do that. Oh, that's a good idea. We don't have to fear gems since we can now just burn them away, so we might as well collect as many as possible in case we come across someone who accepts them as currency. Thanks for that advice. Sadly we still can't get through this pathway here. Even with the mega sword, we can't cut through the metal shrubs. We'll have to figure out with some other way to deal with that. But for now, let's continue to collect gems. Now, if you're especially keen of eye, you may notice something that's a bit off on this screen. I'll give you a few seconds to try and figure out what it is, although I don't blame you if you don't. It requires a very precise eye in keeping in mind exactly what our ultimate goals in the game are. Are you stumped? Well, the thing I was referring to is right over here. If we send our candle blazing over in this direction, you'll notice that one gem survived, and that is because it is not a gem, but a sigil in the shape of a gem. Bingo. That is one of the easier pieces to miss, just because there's so many gems in the maze and it's so easy to just assume it's another gem, even though there are no actual gems that you can collect in the game that are yellow in color. Alright, so we finally made our way through the Twisted Cistern, and now we actually see the other side of the temple that we've come across from the wrong direction in so many instances. Now we can open up a few shortcuts, the one that we just saw, and one that we've come across before as well over here, which allows us to traverse the world much more swiftly. I mentioned before that you lose progress when you quit out of the game. Shortcuts don't count for the most part. Those generally stay put. So again, keeping in mind the fact that you want to look for any yellow objects in the background because they're most likely sigils, there's actually one here that you can use the bridge to get to. This square bracket over here. Having a good eye for things is very helpful in this game if you want to collect everything, or even just beat it. So let's actually head into the temple and see what awaits us. We had one segment before, immediately after the snake segment and the Mind Stone that was in it, where we had the ability to jump, and this is the one other segment of the game where that is the case. It's a bit of light platforming, so if you're not good at the thing, well, too bad, you're gonna kind of have to do it. If only to collect that candle sigil up there. There we go. Now, you'll notice that there's another Mind Stone over there. Unfortunately, we can't get to it just yet because we just picked up the green key. What would normally be a platform is in fact just a series of doors that we can now open. So we're gonna have to come back here when we no longer have a green key. So it's worth keeping that in mind. But for now, let's just make what progress we can. At the very least, we did collect another sigil on our way here. So that seems to be all that's here, so let's make our way back through the Twisted Cistern. Oh, come on, it's not that big of a deal now that I have the candle. You're a bit slow on that remark. You know, that purple gorilla over there, he looks like he's having a bad day. He's just kind of trapped in that little grove. Nothing to entertain him other than gems, so let's see about freeing him. That'll be a good deed for the day. can actually finagle into the proper position, of course. Oh, you're very welcome. Hey, and we're rewarded for our good deed by him unlocking the metal shrubs, letting us progress. Oh, the gorilla works at a helipad. He must lead an interesting life, and again, paying attention to the environment. Another sigil that we can collect. So, an area we could explore is the inside of this heliport here. But even though this area is technically supposed to be the inside of this building here that we're now entering, due to the way that the game world is laid out, it's actually its own entirely separate screen. So what that means is if we place this bridge like so, moving the sword out of the way so that we can actually do it, we can access an entirely new area. Again, paying attention to the environment and what the game has been teaching you in terms of its mechanics. I would really love to see a game like this that is just the text world sequence and expanded and being larger and having more items to progress with. I think that would be really cool. So here we have a yellow gorilla, and you should know the drill by now. That is actually a sigil.
Sneaking into a neighboring farm, corn gaffer Bjorn Bloomingdale misread the no trespassing sign as no traipsing, and assumed that as long as he walked solemnly and deliberately, the guard dogs wouldn't attack. At the hospital, doctors reassured him that a dog's mouth is cleaner than a human's. Not believing it, Bjorn convinced corn boom operator Auk Traceroot to bite his other leg to test the hypothesis. Bjorn died the next day because doctors did not have antibiotics powerful enough to treat both infections.
Oh, the rare double bite situation. How unfortunate. So, while listening to that rather interesting corn fact, we spilled a can of paint, and now all of our keys are colored in orange paint. As I'm sure you can surmise, that means we no longer have the keys we previously did and instead have 6 orange keys. So that means we could return to the temple now, but for now, let's progress a little bit more. Now we're back to the temple, but from an alternate entrance. Some of the areas of the sky are impassable, but the ones that are passable through actually look distinct from the rest of the non-passable bits. So again, paying explicit attention to the environment and the graphics that they're using to convey different things is really important in this part of the game. Ew, gross. So this here looks like it's a big ol' empty room, but if you keep running along the sides, you'll actually discover that it has a few other exits. This is where the autocorrect skates come in handy. Now, we can pick up this purple key and head through the gem factory. We don't need to do that since we already picked up a purple key from the key gen. But we're not going to visit the gem factory just yet, we'll save that for later. We will, however, head down this way so we can pick up this purple bracket over here.
During an all-night studio session, corn backup dancer Ariel Helvetica insisted on arm wrestling every individual chicken wing in the nearby KFC. When bassinet player Garbanzo Gorbachev reminded him that you can't technically arm wrestle a wing, Helvetica quit the band to become a geneticist. His so-called chickens with arms are about to begin FDA testing.
Oh, Corn, you wacky troop, you. So here we have a alternate entrance into the temple that you may have actually noticed when we last entered it if you were paying especially good attention. If you did not spill your keys in paint, heading past this way is another way to avoid picking up the green key entirely and thus make use of that platform of green doors up there. So let's actually take the chance to do that. You also notice that we no longer have the bridge. Typically you carry it between the screens as long as you're holding on to it. But in some screens, carrying the bridge is verboten, and so it is taken from us. Which is fine, it just means we don't need to use it here. Also of importance is coming this way with 50 gems, otherwise you will pick these gems up, rather than utilizing them as a platform. So what awaits us in this Mind Stone here? A series of microphones that you may notice are actually reacting to the sound of my voice, because they're the actual microphones that are connected to my laptop, and it is in fact picking up audio input. You'll see why that's important in a few seconds. For now, let's make sure that the microphone that I'm actually using is calibrated properly. Everyone be quiet. Alright, now everyone should sing like this. Alright, so now our microphone is calibrated, and now we can begin the barbershop race. So this is a really nifty little minigame where, as long as you're giving some sort of audio input into your microphone device, your vehicle will actually move, so long as the blue and red stripes are aligned. To align the blue and red stripes, you have to alternate the pitch of your voice between high and low in order to match the stripes. So ideally you would sing during the sequence. And that's where the trouble for me comes in, because I have a terribly poor music memory. I like listening to music, there are plenty of songs I like, but if you were to ask me to name any song that I enjoy, I would not be able to do that off of the top of my head. I just have a really poor memory with regards to music, and especially so with regards for songs' lyrics. So even if I could tell you a song that I like, I would not be able to tell you anything of the words of it or any of the lyrics. At best, I might be able to replicate some of the general tone of the song, but that's about it. So that's where I kind of suffer with regards to this minigame. Thankfully, it does accept any sort of aural input, so me just talking is actually enough to cause the van to move, on the rare occasions that the blue and red stripes match. You can also just say hum, for example. And in that case, that has actually been considerably more effective than me just speaking. The difficulty of this game is thankfully tuned to be very low, although, again, as with the Biker Chicks game, I'm curious if it's at all possible to get other actual players in on this. It actually very well might be if you have multiple mics hooked up. That's probably why there's actually the different band positions there, now that I'm thinking about it. A lot of these games would actually serve as pretty good party games, and it'd be cool if they did a separate release of just the ones that would serve as that, so you wouldn't have to go through the rest of the Glittermint and Grove and Frog factions to access them. Like, that'd be just a cool thing to take out at a party if you were looking for some party games to play. But for now, we're actually looking to make progress and actually win this game, so let's see if I can't do that. As long as I'm speaking with varying pitch, it should match the red and blue stripes eventually, like so. I can always use my old standby, the Jeopardy theme. Oh, come on, just gotta get a bit further. Okay, whew.